Matthew, you're live now.
All right. Hey, how are you doing, Muhammad?
Very good, very good. Just introduce yourself to everyone who will be watching or listening to this episode.
Absolutely. My name is Matthew Parks, and I am the Senior Director of Information Technology for Pay Center for Girls. And Pay Center for Girls is a nonprofit that is based in Florida presently. We have 20 locations around the state of Florida, 21 including our headquarters. We ventured out into the Macon area as well. So that's a future endeavor that we're excited about. And what we do is we actually help young ladies reach their potential who may have had some traumatic experiences that have impacted their education. We partner with those 20 counties and we work with them to supplement the education part while giving them counseling to help them through the traumatic pieces that they may have encountered. My job is simply to provide the technology that keeps the trains on time, right? So, in a nutshell, that's what I do.
Beautiful. And Matthew, how you came here? You should have a journey coming to
Hmm,
pay. Like you have started somewhere, and then
right.
eventually, you got some experience. How was your journey coming into the IT? You were very passionate, or it was accident?
That's kind of funny. Often tell people that I didn't choose IT. IT chose me.
Yeah.
I kind of came into it through study. One of the things I did early on, I've been in IT, first of all, professionally, I've been in IT for since 1995. So you're talking
Wow.
25 some years or something, so a long time. And I started out in the case when we actually had to use dip switches to configure computers and stuff, on the hardware side. Um, yeah, so when dinosaurs roamed the earth kind of thing. So I've been in it for a long time, and what I did is coming out of school, I did research. So there were magazines that were available that kind of projected jobs that were going to be hot jobs moving forward. They still do those type of things. So one of those pieces that I did is I did that and kind of matched my interests with it, and I went in a different direction. Then I kind of came back to technology because it kept grabbing me in different ways, and so I had an acumen for it. So I moved in that direction,
Mhm.
and so yeah, that's how I got into the field. I've always, even as a kid, I've always been kind of into science. I've always been into computers. I go back to those old Radio Shack TRS-80s,
Yeah.
Coleco Atom.
For them.
So I had those devices a long time ago, even as a kid. So I've always kind of been in the field. Um, but peripherally, but now professionally, again, since 1995 is when I actually started working professionally in the field. I started out working there as an assembly tech for a company down in Clearwater, Florida. I moved away from my hometown of Jacksonville, Florida, to Clearwater, no, I mean to Tampa to attend school. And while I was there, got my first job in the industry. And that job, I was started out as an assembly tech, building computers per customer order. And as we started to do that, I was also what we term as a wire monkey, where I would go through the cabling piece, because back then it was kind of more an apprenticeship, if you will, that where you had someone that actually did the work, or that was kind of um, the real technician, and you kind of work your way through doing those menial tasks of building computers. Then you learn how to configure them. Then you have to learn how to troubleshoot them, and so you grew knowledge that way through kind of even an apprenticeship piece. And the same thing with the cabling, where I learned the principles of cabling, and how to how to pull cable, what type of cable should you use for this type of environment. So that was kind of where I came through. um, and then I moved back home because my parents, both of them, decided they wanted to get sick. I wound up moving back home to Jacksonville, and I took a job with America Online at the time, huge provider at the time. And I was fortunate enough to get on with them, and I learned something there through phone support. So I got a job with them via where I was a technical representative. And so people would call into with problems and such. And I found that that job taught me so much that, it was such a rich on the job training. They had a great training course, but, being able to guide people through their computer to troubleshoot it without actually seeing it, because we didn't have like we have now a remote desktop. So, someone would call in
You
and you
have
would actually have to, right, you had to know the operating system, really. And particularly then, we had to know multiple operating systems like you kind of do now, but Windows wasn't quite as dominant. So, you had Windows 3.1, you had different versions of Windows,
yeah,
first of all.
that was a big pain too.
Right. And then we were supporting Apple at the time.
Mhm.
And so based on what the person was running, and they didn't always know what they were running. So having to guide them through telling us what they had. And again, I was troubleshooting. What was funny is that I had one of the highest trouble clearance rates on Windows 95, which had just come out.
Oh,
But one day I came into my supervisor came into the office for an evaluation, and he was, wow, you're really going through this Windows 95 stuff, and because it's a new operating system, and you're really taking to it. I know 3.1, and so he asked me a question, and I'm looking at his screen, and I said, so what operating system is that? Is that 95? And he said, yeah. And he said, and he looked at me and said, what? You've never actually seen it? And I was like, no, I've never actually seen the
okay.
operating system. And to him, that was amazing that I was able to, have the quality of troubleshooting. But
Not
I
even,
told him I just memorized the slides because I have a great memory. So that's kind of where a lot of it was, is that we had the slide book that we go through. And so someone would say, oh, well, I'm on this screen. You got to flip through and say this what it was. So I could kind of see it in my head as I close my eyes where they should be and what was on that screen. So yeah, it's not like, again, today where we kind of, um, we send them a link and they click on the link and we can take control of their machine. Back then, it was a case where we actually had to, they had to drive, and we just basically had to explain it and where to go.
it was
So,
profitable, like for the, I think it was more profitable for the company owners.
mm,
Uh, we as worker you make whatever they give you, but they were making banks.
oh
You
yeah,
small problem, and they send you $150. How much they have?
mm,
15 bucks.
yeah, and then you got to remember, AOL was one of the first companies that actually had that had free support of their product. So that was one of the benefits, to where if you got that disc, which everybody did, right? Got that disc in the mail and you plugged it in, we actually troubleshoot that for free, which no one did at the time. It was something no large company did at the time, where, to your point, yeah, you'd have to pay someone for that support, or you'd have to have a retainer, right? Where you've paid up front for that. Um, so that was pretty cool, but it really taught me a lot about the operating system, and it really taught me about also about UI, but also about the UX, the user experience, which is where I kind of excel moving forward, is through my journey. Um, so then I kind of bounced around from there to different jobs. I worked for another computer builder assembly place here in town in Jacksonville. I actually took a break from computers for a minute and wound up working for a place that actually repaired car radios. Because, and funny story about that now, but back then you have to remember that computers weren't really its own thing. It was a part of the electronic field still.
Yeah.
So, my degree was in electronic engineering technology, because there was no real computing field unless you were a programmer. So it was still a subset of electronics until it became its own true own thing. So I ventured into that. I repaired car radios for about a year, and then I was able to get on with another company that did a field level support. So I was the area support person for a POS system, point of sale, computerized point of sale systems. And then I moved from there to another company that did that. And then, of course, there was the tech bubble burst,
Oh yeah.
and I was laid off from that job. And then I moved on to a local nonprofit, which was actually a private school here in town. So they gave me, some inroads into education technology, as well as the nonprofit space for technology. And I was there for 10 years, and now and started off my role here, and worked my way through to PACE. And what was really attractive about the PACE opportunity is that at the time, they were looking to really do something impactful and transformative. The technology, we used that term very loosely back then. It existed, but it wasn't really helpful. It was more of a nuisance. And so, when I came on board, they were in the process of actually building out a technology premise that actually was going to be a lattice, a support lattice, as opposed to what it was at the time. And so we were able to really do that, and we built a team to support it, and we built the premise. So, and now, we're on the other side where we're kind of a cutting edge in our industry for what we do.
Nice. That's wonderful. I see you are very passionate about the cloud services, and that really intrigued me to have an interview with you. Like Microsoft Azure, AWS, which is my favorite topic too. What do you think? Which one is better, or you have better support, or what you think? Azure versus AWS. Which one you will choose if you have to build something?
So it all depends on your individual needs. So that's one of the things that I like to caution people is you have to look at your company mission, your company needs, and then make a decision based on that.
Mhm.
We were in a place where we were building a Microsoft house, so it was more, I won't say convenient, but advantageous for us to go with the Azure cloud because of the integration. As Microsoft around 2012, when they started to release their new server products, they started to build in the cloud components. You remember that Exchange Online came along around that time. You had Azure started to come along online, and they started to build into the server products those premises that you can actually plug directly into. So for us, particularly as a nonprofit, it became a cost vector for us it was easier for us from a cost perspective, but also from a support perspective, because as a nonprofit, you don't really we can't really build out massive teams who can do these type of things. So we have to make sure that we codify our specialties in different ways that really benefit us moving forward, so that we can be nimble and be able to support our as large a premise and footprint we have, but with a very small team. So that was why we chose Microsoft, really was because we were already in Microsoft House, so it was more advantageous for us to continue along that linear path, as opposed to having to become experts in something else.
Mhm.
Now, again, the other caution is that cloud is its own thing.
Yeah.
You know, I've built and stood up servers for 20 years before, I got into the cloud business, and a lot of the tenets, a lot of the principles are completely foreign. So you have to learn a new language basically when it comes to how that works, expressways and those type of things, how you interconnect pieces. But I will say also that both AWS and Microsoft have done a great job, and Google have done a great job of building in certain premises that are more familiar. So as opposed to you back in the day having to stand it all up on your own, you can basically just buy a virtual server
Yeah.
and stand it up in the premise, right? Same thing with Exchange Online, where it actually is, the Exchange version in an online premise. So you don't have to actually stand an entire premise up. You have to just migrate your premise into that cloud section. So that has also been something where technology has caught up to help benefit the customer, make it easier, because it was a little you could get deterred easily
Mhm.
by what you saw early on.
Yeah, and and you have seen after Corona, I was
Mhm.
I was really into when this Corona thing happened. I was doing a big project for a big national bank. We were deploying like all the desktop environments for them. It's one of the biggest bank in America. And then all of a sudden, a team came and they say, "Oh, you are leaving everything as it is. You're not doing anything more." And say, like, "What happened?" "Oh, we are making this whole place as our base camp for Corona. To study, to research on it." As a bank, I said, "Really, you are doing that?" He said, "Yeah, we have to do it because we are everywhere in America and Canada." I said, okay. So I was very eager to do my research. And then I said, Microsoft's gonna be a big winner out of this pandemic because team was really getting out of it. And that is what happened. Uh, 10 million users, now they have 75 million and plus users on
Right.
Microsoft Teams. and they are growing leaps and bounds. So they really win out of this pandemic too. Microsoft really win out of this. As do Zoom. We are on Zoom call. They win.
Mhm.
Uh, their share grown from zero to somewhere like they are more profitable than many other people. And I
Right.
think the corona has told us that a lot of businesses, nonprofits, they were not ready for this thing. Now, like
No.
nobody was ready. All of a sudden, you have to make working from home, close everything. You
Mhm.
don't know anything. So I think that it became a bigger challenge for people like you who are on the forefront of like running the whole organizations. What you thinking, what will happen in the next 3 months? We have already gone through like 3.5 months. What do you think, what we need to do now?
Just to give you some background, I mean, one of the things that, because the other thing that you asked about was, and just to dovetail that into this conversation, being a nonprofit, it really helped us to be cloud, right? Because a lot of the services per dollar were less expensive with the cloud premise as it was to just do an on-premise
Hmm.
piece. So because of that, and your scaling is a lot better and a lot faster, that you can scale faster through the cloud than you can by building this on-premise. And lastly, your actual on-site premises. I mean, you have to, if you want to build this thing on site, you've got to have, room to put this in, and electricity and AC and cooling. Whereas, the more that you can offload onto a cloud premise, it helps you to be able to meet this type of demand quickly. So the example that I would give you for us is that we were using Teams. We were a Skype for business through Microsoft 365 or Office 365 at the time, and we transitioned in December to Teams.
Yeah, because I was getting
Right.
Facebook. Yeah.
Yeah. So Skype, that was one of the things I was waiting for. I was actually on a training call with Microsoft regarding Teams, and I asked the question, "Hey, when are you going to deprecate Skype for Business?" Because that kind of informs me as to when I really need to shift my business. My team, I also, you speak of Microsoft, we actually take to heart we dog food. We everything that we do from a technical perspective as much as we can. We were living on Teams a year prior to that announcement in August,
Sure.
and the person on the call, the Microsoft rep, she went away and she came back and said, "Well, here's the announcement," and they had just released a press release while we were in the training
Oh.
that when they were deprecating Teams. So that gave me the ammo to then go back to leadership and say, okay, we need to make the switch. And so we made the switch in December. We had already pushed everyone in that direction. We were starting to do that, prior to December, of course, but December was the hard date where we turned off Skype for Business, and you were forced to do that premise. Um, Teams benefit for that was that Teams being such a collaborative space, because I know we talk Zoom versus Teams, but they're not really competitors except in this one instance of video conferencing. But as far as the having a collaborative platform where you have your chat, you have files, it's a lot different. Persistent chat, meaning that my team right now is actually engaged in a chat that, and if you look at the history of that chat, it goes back 2 years. So you don't really have that. If you and I chat doing Zoom right now, once we terminate the call, it's gone. So I don't have that record. And then incorporating that as we talk about with some of the DLP that exist in Microsoft, where you can actually monitor and control the communications. So it's a different premise. Zoom is great at what it does. It really is. And it's actually pushed the rest of the market to have to make changes, such as Microsoft now has the 9x9, the 3x3 grid, and they're moving to a 7x7 grid because they're feeling the pressure from Zoom. Um, and same thing with Cisco WebEx. They're feeling that same, pressure. Google made the Meet free because they were feeling the pressure from Zoom as well. So Zoom put a lot of pressure on folks because, they decided, hey, we're going to really innovate and really make video conferencing easy and make it streamlined. Now, the other side of that, though, is that whenever you got ease of use and you have security on that balance. And so because they were so leaning toward ease of use, security was down here. They said it was here, but once you started getting into corporate where people actually knew what was going on, you saw that it wasn't there. So now they're having to backfill a lot of the security pieces in that piece. So, there's a little give and take with everybody and what they've had to do during the pandemic. So, so now we fast forward to, March. And in March, our first locally in Jacksonville, our mayor made the announcement in the state of Florida. The Jacksonville mayor, Lenny Curry, was the first one to actually shut down a city in the state of Florida. Then the governor basically put that into use to where other cities started to make their own decisions based on how we made our decision. And it was a ripple effect that happened at the local level, and then the governor got behind it. So that's actually how the shutdown happened in Florida. And as we moved through this, it was a case where, okay, so how do we teach? And so for us, because we had these cloud licensings that we had that available to us that we hadn't activated yet, meaning our student licenses in the cloud, we made cloud only accounts for our students. And through PowerShell, we were able to just basically turn those licenses on. We did it. We have 3,500 students. We have 2,700 active. So we were able to turn on 2,700 students over a weekend with accounts.
That's a big
because that's what we needed to do to be active for when school started in most of our districts on that next week. And so we're talking a lot of things here about how cloud and how the collaborative allowed us to be able to set up our virtual classrooms and be able to continue delivering education to our students. So moving forward as to today, you have businesses are reopening. Businesses are trying to figure out what their premise is going to be, what it looks like going back to work. For some businesses, most businesses I know are going 50-50. There are some that are going full bore and having everyone go in. The recommendation, again, just speaking for Florida, from the Department of Education here, they recommend sending everybody back to work because it's an economic issue. If you don't have children in school, then parents can't go back to work, right? So it kind of builds on each other. So based on that premise of that, but some of the districts have pushed back. We've had one local district to us in Duval, another adjacent district push back and say, no, they're going 50-50 when they go back. And we've had other large districts down in South that, because they're still in phase one of the reopening, that have pushed back and say, no, we're actually not going to bring all of our students back on campus either for the same reason. And so I said all that to say that virtual is still going to be with us, because even in our own business, as we're bringing people back, we're encouraging people at our headquarters to continue to, if you can have a meeting virtually, have it virtually. For the last 90 days, we've been able to have the greatest test case in the history of man for remote services.
Never done this kind of,
No.
I mean, I'm in for 20 plus years in my professional world, done IT audits, and, and we always said, this can happen, that can happen. And, I worked for a company which was like 5,000 plus user company. And we were not able to move like 1,000 employees at one time from Lotus 3.1 to 3.2 at that point.
Wow.
Okay. Because they were saying, oh, like what will happen to my files? And we were not sure. And we were very hesitant to give them upgrades at that point because there was no cloud, when the Lotus was big thing.
Right.
And then eventually, if I look today, migration can take a little bit of time, but the adoption of that can take a lot of time because employees are not used to the cloud. They don't have, some days ago, somebody talked with me and they say, like, what happened that we use Teams, but now we don't know where our files are. We never done any confidentiality on them. We never, because Teams are right now, people are using as of user-based rather than role-based.
Right.
So suppose you told everyone, hey, you need files, okay, I'm sending you a file in a Microsoft Teams channel. But now, because channel were so big and so people used like joining and leaving each channel, nobody know who is the owner of this file, who is doing edits, because there was no role-based confidentiality on those files. So that became a challenge too, that we're trying to solve, like little by little, as Microsoft also releasing more features every day. Because I'm doing training every day on the Microsoft Teams platform too, and I see that they are on an average releasing 6 to 7 features a week, which is because like they are hiring more people. As you might not know, actually AWS just opened office right next to Microsoft's office. They
Yeah.
want to say, okay, come to this bandwagon. Because now, I don't know, maybe AWS is looking to build something like Microsoft Teams now. I'm not sure.
Yeah, they're looking about something. They just they just have a partnership with Slack, right?
Oh, yeah, yeah, that is right. That's
Yeah,
right.
they just signed a big contract with Slack, and so yeah, they want to try to build something. They actually have their own internal
Chime.
collaboration. I can't remember the name. Yeah, Chime.
Yeah.
And so there's a possibility that they'll be incorporating Chime and some of the features from Chime into Slack. And I mean, it could be a great. I mean, they have plenty of money. It could be a great purchase opportunity for Amazon to be able to jump into this space because everybody wants to be in the space now.
Yeah.
Because to the point we're making is that the virtual this is not going away. This is not going away for a lot of different reasons. Number one, again. We were able to do something in 90 days in the last 90 days that nobody thought could happen. I know that I had resistance in my organization about it. I know others have resistance in their organizations about it. I've talked to CIOs all over the country, and everybody basically. I was on a call recently with some other tech leaders, two CIOs and senior directors, like VPs of technology, and the question came up. So how do you increase adoption of these premises of video conferencing or to the other collaboration premises like Slack or Teams, and it was pretty simple. I said, "We'll create a pandemic." Because what happens is that
Yeah.
everybody was forced to do this, and some of the points that you make are valid, but just to color in the lines a little bit, the reason that a lot of those issues exist is because we had to do this in a hurry. I had a weekend to bring in 2,700 people. I had less than that to acclimate all the people who hadn't adopted Teams yet, that even though we had it for 3-4 months,
Mhm.
so it was a case where we had to do a lot of work quickly to get everybody there so that we can continue business continuity part of it,
Mhm.
but also being able to, now we've had to backfill a lot of the security pieces, and having different people, as on any engineering piece. From an engineering perspective, once you bring in new people, they stress test it in ways that you don't, because typically technology people and the people who do the training, they use it the way it's supposed to be used, right? You teach them how to use it, and that's how they use it. Where if you bring in, if you imagine bringing in kids who are used to chat, who are used to this type of social environment, they broke things that we didn't know were possible to break, or they did things that we didn't know. So it's like, okay, now we have to make sure we're securing it this way, or we had to do it because things we didn't anticipate based on how we were teaching them what to do. So what's awesome is that we were able to do that in that short period of time, and that's kind of what you're talking about, right? Your organization was able to had to make a quick turnaround. We had gone mobile again because we're a nonprofit. We took advantage of the fact that we were small and nimble, and we bought all of our 98 is the number I have, 98, 99% of our computers
Mhm.
are laptops.
Okay.
So for us, it was a case where, what were the instructions? Well, it was easy because in Florida, we built for hurricanes
Oh, yeah.
as a part of our disaster recovery plan. And for me, I don't necessarily believe in disaster recovery more than I do business continuity. So being able to tell everybody, go home with your laptop, make sure that you take what you need out of your office. Um, if you have a cell phone, make sure that you take that with you as well, and show them how to put the Teams app on the cell phone, and that we can actually call students through Teams, and walking through how all of those actually work, that we can still keep the business side from a communication perspective.
Mhm.
But again, we had to do that in a hurry. We hadn't done it with our students. And then as we did our surveys, we saw that there was a huge gap in, we've talked about this notion in this country of the technical divide, right?
Oh, yeah.
This pandemic, among other things that it showed in cracks in our society, the technology divide was front and center, because you have students that weren't able to work from home.
Mhm.
because, in our own research, we saw we had students who may have had a computer. And of those who had a computer, that computer was being shared by multiple people in the household. And so now you're asking them to do 6 hours of work,
Yeah.
but they may have a sister or a mother
Mhm.
who also, or a father who's got to work from home.
Yeah.
So we saw that, them having a computer at home wasn't actually the fix, because that computer they may not have access to it when we need them to have access to it. And of those who had it, some didn't have internet. They were, using their phone,
Mhm.
right, at home for internet related things such as social media, email, those type of things. Um, and of those who had it, they didn't have adequate internet. So there were a lot of pieces that had to be put together, supplementing. And we're fortunate that we had that. I know someone who actually is a vice president of a large bank that's has a large premise here,
Mhm.
and them having to send all of their employees home was a challenge because they had all desktops. So now they had to go out and buy
Bye.
somewhere in the neighborhood about 7, 8,000, laptops
Yeah.
all of a sudden.
CDW was out of stock. Big vendors were out of stock, and they
Mhm,
were saying, "Hey, we don't have any laptops.
right.
We can have Chromebooks."
Mhm,
And people say, like Chromebooks, what we can do with Chromebooks? And then like desktop as a service can be a big role there when
mhm,
Chromebooks to be used. Um,
right.
but one thing that I want to tell you that which I learned, maybe you know that too, when somebody is joining a Microsoft Teams call, like student is joining your Teams call, if they join after, if the call is already started by the teacher,
Uh-huh.
and then they join, now they will have the quality of the teacher's network as
Right.
compared to their network. A lot of people are doing that mistake, that they are joining call before the administrator is joining the call. Now
Okay.
they are giving their own network priority. So I always tell people, hey, tell your, if you are getting into a corporate conference call, don't
Hmm.
just start 2 minutes before that and say, okay, it will connect. Now your connection will be very have problems, like it will be having, it will look like legacy connection because you are joining from your home internet, which doesn't have that kind of capabilities as of your corporate internet. So that is one thing that I always tell people: don't join calls before the admin start the call.
That's a very and provided that the admin has adequate internet, everybody should be fine. Yeah, that's an interesting point
Because
that I.
now he's using his bandwidth. So
Hmm.
everybody
Hmm.
using his bandwidth, his connection quality will be prioritized by the Microsoft team as compared to home internet's quality.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
No, that's
that
interesting.
is one thing that I always tell people. I really appreciate that you were able to get 3,500 users.
Hmm.
uh, with, I know how much resources you have. As a nonprofit, you have less resources.
Right.
Getting that big people is a big achievement. I really appreciate.
No, and again, it's more of this. I have to really, give a hats off to my team because, but Microsoft does make it relatively easy to do so because we were able to automate that through PowerShell, right? Once
Yes.
we knew what we wanted to call the accounts, once we knew not only what we wanted to call the accounts, but how we wanted them configured and such, we were able to just stand up the premises. Now, and as you made a point that they've released new policies that are more student and education related that we just saw last week. There was a big announcement with 20 updates that are either in the pipe, that are either live now in the pipe or coming soon by the fall, toward that end, such as the 7x7, where you can have 49 people, the new education policies that you can apply to students and to teachers, where you can set up different ways for them to, once they join, limits on or roles that you can do. So which that's nice. That did not exist and that we needed desperately. And so a lot of those things that we look through are able to help us. But yeah, the automation piece was huge,
Yeah.
because for so that means that my total user base that we're supporting went from about 500 with I have a team of 7.
Yeah.
So it went from 500 to essentially some neighborhood about 3,000, or again over a weekend. So that was another challenge for us that we had to make sure that we could mitigate through that.
Now that's a great achievement, and I would love to talk more
Mm,
about that. We would have some more, I think, talks. You're really, like have you can really educate. I would love to have another session with you where you can go and we can make a video of other CTOs
mm,
which are trying in nonprofits how to migrate in a good way to the
mm,
cloud, and
right.
that would be a great the thing that we can share on YouTube with people, that hey, if you are trying to achieve, I have already done it. You can either like at free of cost call me, if you would be like give them that kind of expertise with because nonprofit, you have a bigger heart as
Mm,
compared to corporates, like corporates doesn't want to give anything away, but that's the
right.
thing you want to do, you want to give away because that is what your mentality is. So I really love talking with you today. And I would say that we should have more calls. And I see a lot of people who are joining me on my podcast. And then I think after some months, I would love to have a big conference call where
Okay.
each of you should come and share what happened after 3 months more. Because I think in 6 months, we will have a plethora of information coming. Hey, like this challenges came, we solved like that, so we can have our own community of like people's helping each other. Hey, if I have this problem, what happened with you, because you were trying to solve the same problem in Microsoft Teams. So
Right.
that is my end goal is to use really LinkedIn in our favor as compared to just Facebook, like. So Matthew, again, thank you very much.
I'll
And
tell you, Mohammed, it's been a pleasure. And to your point, if you check, I think it's published also on my LinkedIn site, but I did an article for CIO Review on technology and nonprofits. It's actually called Making the Case for Technology Transformation in the Nonprofit Space. It got picked up by a couple of other newspapers, but it kind of goes through that journey that we had here at Pace and how we were able to make those decisions, and how not only was it the tech team, but it was also integral for leadership to uh, to be a partner in that transformation. Because I know colleagues of mine and friends of mine in the same boat that their leadership isn't quite bought in on it, and so just the challenges that you can have there. So I would encourage you to take a look at it.
I will.
It's not, yeah, take a look at it.
Matthew, thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate.